Hey folks, Salty Seaman here. Another Tales from the Fleet, going off the chronological again. A couple things came up today. I'm in the middle finals, by the way. I haven't really put out like a video that or a video, audio, whatever that takes a lot of effort on my part. Recently, these are pretty easy to slap together as long as I have the material to record. So yeah, I've not been posting a lot. I was due to a couple of military movie bullshits. It's finals. What can I do? But I figure get some content out there, and especially since this came up and it's related to good Lord, my favorite topic. I can't get away from stolen valor, which is cool. Is like people want to come to me. I made the video. It's huge. Obviously, I get that a lot when it's not questions about military movies and whatnot. I think I do kind of get like put as this, the guy who can between recognizing movie discrepancies and the stolen valor video. Like I'm like the go-to expert on like what looks real and what looks bullshit. I mean, hey, I go by what I know. I'm a pretty observant dude who did 20 years in the military, and I lived with my dad, career Marine before that. So I know a few things. I am not the be all end all expert on stolen valor, on the movies I review, but I know what I know, and what I'm questionable about, I can usually look up. So, that's kind of where I see myself as. But I appreciate people coming to me like, "Hey, is this stolen valor?" Like, I don't really know. You seem like you know. That's cool. But people always ask, like, when you see it, I mentioned it in the video, and one of the stories I'm going to tell here, I think I mentioned in the Valor video, or one of them, maybe one of the follow-ups, briefly. I'll go into it in more detail here. These are ones that happened to me, service member to service member in the service. The first one being on the Blue Ridge, going back to where I left off in my main story. And this will tell you a little difference about that back, me now and me back then, first termer. There was no internet. There really wasn't a big push for like any kind of like be wary of people lying about shit. I mean, we knew about it. I mean, you'd read stories in the Navy Times or Marine Corps Times or whatever, some guy busted for, and I'm talking inter service here, guy had forged his record or whatever, was wearing shit he wasn't supposed to wear. Of course, like that, my first year, basically my first year in, Admiral Borda killed himself, in relation to he was about to be exposed for that combat action ribbon from his first ship when he joined in the Vietnam. I know there's still a lot of debate about that. I'm not going to get into that whole thing, whether that was authorized or not. But at the same time, like that stuff popped up, but it seemed so, like something that was rare, or something like, you hear stories of guys who, were on I think the Fife. There was two DKs that, DK2 and a DKSN who just robbed the safe and like, went AWOL attempting to live in Thailand off a couple $100,000, and then they blew through it in a couple of months and then turned themselves back in. Those stories, I mean, yeah, they're great and fanciful, but they seem the rarity. So when somebody says something about their past and they're not, or you don't even have a reason to suspect it, especially if they're really seeming to keep it on the down low, as our first guy did. Now, I'm not going to say his name because I'm actually not 100% sure the name I remember is the same one, because he was a DC-2, heavy set guy with black hair, Caucasian. And I knew another DC-2 on my next ship, and also my command after that. And I can't remember which one's name was which, but I'm fairly sure the one I remember is the one I'm talking about here. But I don't, just because I don't know, A, don't know if it's true. B, I don't know if he would support or deny he ever said that. C, yeah, you don't. It's one of those things you don't want to call someone out when you're not 100% sure. But this is one of those things where like I kind of, it came to me retroactively because I didn't know any better. I was probably 2 years in when I heard. It was from my friend, originally from my friend Roth. I've talked about on here, who ended up in a long conversation with the guy who was on watch in DC Central. He was just, he didn't never went anywhere. He would just wander around the ship sometimes in civilian clothes and just talk to people randomly because Roth's weird. But he went and talked to him, and he was like, and somehow he ended up, and he kind of was Like, I'm really not supposed to talk about this, that whole thing. And then when apparently he went to this long spiel about, he was in the SEALs and, he'd seen some stuff he wasn't supposed to, maybe illegal arms dealing, if I remember the story right. It was something really, in retrospect, it's like, that's fucking, it's some movie shit. But this time, it sounded believable. And he's like, yeah, that's why I don't wear the pin. That's why I don't talk about it. It's a big deal. I managed to stay in the Navy, but, I lost being a SEAL because of that. And I think he took my friend to his rack and showed him his trident. He says, like, yeah, that's the one I earned from Buds, blah, blah, blah. And eventually I would, it came up, I was with him somewhere. Like, I knew some of the RDiv guys, and I'd sometimes drink with him. I cranked with a few. And, yeah, I think it came up, and he kind of, I remember him, like, confirming it to me, what I heard was true. And I think he didn't really talk a whole lot, and I didn't know any better to even ask questions back then. I was just like, wow, that's crazy. And certainly what sealed it was a few months even after that, I made third, and I ran into him at Buffalo's on the Haunch in Yokosuka, and he tacked my crow on. And like, I wasn't like a super tiny little dude, but I mean, I was, skinny, way skinnier than I am now, but I was a solid 75 pound guy. And yeah, he put me on the fucking floor, and he was not trying to punch me that hard. He was trying to give me a good thunk, and it put me on the ground. And of all the tackings I got, that was the worst. So yeah, I mean, the dude could throw a punch, and he was strong as shit. I mean, I'll definitely confirm that part. But the rest of that story, now in hindsight, and heard so much of what I've heard with stolen valor and fake Navy SEALs, it's like, man, that story is a bit hard to swallow. And here's another one from Blue Ridge as well. Not quite, I don't think you could call it stolen valor in any shape, but you could definitely call it letting people think you're something you're not, whether it was for a prank, personal shits and giggles, or another case of just, I want people to think I'm something I'm not. And I'm not going to mention his name either because, I know a lot of people I know personally who would know that person who listens to this. So I'll just say it starts with a P. And this one I know for sure, and I just definitely confirmed it with someone else I was talking from the Blue Ridge I was just talking to. Just say RM2P. There was a rumor going around he was in CIS. I mean, it was like this underground, like, psst, hear this. Like, it wasn't something anyone, like, he bragged. I don't think he ever said anything about. But it sure seemed he dropped enough hints and had a lot of weird things about his orders and places he'd been. I mean, I think there's I think there's something to it. Maybe he was some kind of wacky training he might have been in, but I mean, who knows for sure? People said like his orders came in when he left and they were really weird. They didn't look like normal Navy orders. Like he dropped mention in a conversation he'd done like gun training in Norway or some place like that, and seemed like kind of upset at himself that he'd even mentioned it. But I mean, who knows? I mean, that very there could be absolutely nothing to that. It could be very well he was what everyone thought he was, or he liked the idea of people thinking he was some kind of weird spook, in CIS or not. And here's another one from my next ship, Third Command, which I know I've talked about before. I don't remember exactly which video it was, but I'll go in a little bit more depth and detail here. I was on the John C. Stennis in San Diego, so this would have been 2003, 2004. And, I was out in the gas lamp district drinking with some friends from the ship, and we ran into, unsurprisingly, other sailors out in the gas lamp. I think these guys are from a small boy on 32nd Street. I don't remember the name of the ship anymore, but among them was what I gathered was QM2, who was claiming, I guess he was telling all his buddies he's a former SEAL. They just came up and like offered it. Like we ran into them and they're like, hey, blah, blah, blah. We figured out each other's Navy, looking at each other's haircuts is usually a good sign. So it probably came up pretty quick, but then they were pretty quick to offer. It's like, yeah, our buddy over there, he's ex-Navy SEAL. These guys were pretty drunk. It was around midnight. They were a little younger than us. We were kind of a mid-20s crowd. We knew how to handle our drink by then. These are like a younger 20s crowd. A couple of years makes a difference at that age. So these guys were just talking all of it. And you could tell this guy had probably been winding these guys up for who fucking knows how long, 6 months to a year, about his SEAL exploits. So at this point, I know a little bit more in life. I've been around the Navy going on 8 years at this point, and I knew at least about kind of heard about these fake SEALs in bars, and even heard like, yeah, sometimes it's like active duty guys doing this shit. It's probably the first time I started thinking about that DC2 guy, who, by the way, I just recalled another thing. Yeah, DC was not a source rate. HT was. Maybe he did a cross rate, but I don't know. Anyway, QM is a source rate, so it would have made sense. I said, knowing a little bit more, and yeah, I mean, I didn't even bring it up to the guy. I was like, it was pretty. I mean, that stuff, I think I kind of swept out of my mind, and just the whole group of us were talking, and then it came up. Someone said, hey, I heard you were SEAL. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, but a long time ago. Blah, blah, blah. I said, hey, what was your butts class number? He was like, oh, man, that was so long ago, I don't even remember it. Imagine this guy's still, maybe 22, 23 at most. Yeah, and so he couldn't have gone through buds that long ago. 3 years tops, probably. And he can't remember his bud's class number anymore. And yeah, then that was like, I just saw the look of kind of confusion on his friend's face, and they kind of looked at me like a couple of them were confused. One guy kind of figured out, like, who was probably suspicious. One of the friends who was probably suspicious all along started looking at me with that look like, he's calling his bullshit. And I followed up with some other stuff I don't remember. And then the guy just kind of shut off about it and just said, I don't really want to talk about it, blah, blah, blah. And I left it at that. At the time it was cool enough because I knew I'd put enough doubt in his friends' heads, without spoiling the whole fucking party and the group, what was going on there. And I said, and it was a bit of a different time. That was, 15 years ago. And, even like we weren't patrolling ourselves even internally back then as well as we do now. And I think that's the rise of social media and kind of exposing, these, something, you could do just inside the service. You think like the most dangerous game, lying about your past service. And, and I've heard horror stories, some dude that was in I believe my home state, the Georgia National Guard, started wearing a trident and said he was ex-Navy SEAL, and they believed him and they put him in charge of patrols and shit. And he fucked shit up, like nearly killed people. And then people who were suspicious, like, looked into it and said, he was an aviation mechanic or something in the Navy when he was in, or, I know, like, the Stolen Valor video, everyone like, why are you picking on the aviation mechanics? I'm like, dude, I swear, every time I hear these stupid stories, it was like an ex-aviation mechanic. I don't know what to tell you. Or cooks, or, DC QMs some on occasion as well. But anyways, those are, just things. I don't think it happens as much in the military because it's just so easier. We're so much more visible on Stolen Valor as a whole, and just with, record, just with the internet and records checking, or just asking someone, an admin, it's so easy to, number one, to get that suspicion, and number two, just go to someone's like, hey, can you verify if this guy ever did anything like he says he is? You don't have to give me specifics. You could probably ask someone, an admin, pretty easy to do that. Or, many other sources. Now, before I wrap this up, one more thing, kind of funny, going horseshoe back to the Blue Ridge here. There was a guy who actually was a badass, and like no one knew about it for a year or so because he didn't fucking talk about it. And yes, I know for a verifiable fact all his shit was true because I'd seen his DD-214. Holla, I was an admin. But yeah, it was this guy, RM3 Eppard, was former Marine Recon, and he'd seen some shit. He had a fucking stack. He never wore, and that's where he got in trouble. Some chief knew, is like, dude, like, I know you have a lot more ribbons than what you have, you ex-JR head, come put them, I expect to see you wearing what you earned. Something like that. That was a story. Some chief in comm yelled at him about it. So he shows up with parachutist and diver helmet and, this giant stack of ribbons like none of us had seen. I can't remember if any were combat. I don't know if any were like combat action or. It felt like something. There was some pretty prestigious shit on there you wouldn't get from sitting, at home in the barracks. So that was like a reverse case of that, which I just thought was interesting. Anyway, yeah, I mean, on this touchy subject, stolen valor. It's it is different how much we view it, that we've changed, and like how much smarter we are to it. The kids coming out of boot camp now are a lot more prevalent of it. Unfortunately, sometimes these guys end up being kind of too excitable attack dogs, and I've got a whole video on that. But it is a different world, and we're just more savvy to stuff, and I just found that pretty interesting. That's all the Salty Seaman has for now. I'll catch you freaks later. Peace.